Canada's Auditor General released a report yesterday revealing massive corruption in the Liberal government. And in question period, all opposition parties tore into the government as a result. Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. I hope you're having a great day. Well, the Auditor General's report that she released in a press conference yesterday showed severe problems with the government and, I would say, massive corruption. Her report focused on 3 audits that her office did on the government. As a result, every party tore into the government during question period yesterday. So I want to go to question period first. We're going to show you some clips of all the parties, all the opposition parties tearing into the government. Then I'm going to show you a small clip of the Auditor General's press conference. Finally, I'm going to show a clip of the government's response. And afterwards, we'll discuss the significance of this report.
The Auditor General released another report showing that $123 million in spending in the Prime Minister's Green Slush Fund broke the rules. According to one of the bureaucrats involved, the entire expenditure resembles the Liberal sponsorship scandal. We already knew that the Prime Minister liked to give tax dollars to his favorite consulting company, McKinsey, a company that helps supercharge drug overdose deaths as part of the opioid crisis. But today we learned from the Auditor General that it's far more money than thought. It was 200 million Canadian tax dollars for this one company. 90% of those contracts didn't follow government rules, 70% of them without a competitive process, 100% of them with the NDP voting in favor.
How rich do Liberals have to get before they solve climate change? The AG's latest report found that the Liberal-created Green Slush Fund has been directing tens of millions of dollars into companies owned by, you guessed it, themselves. Their own civil servants called it outright incompetence, but it's worse than that. $123 million of inappropriate contracts, almost half, shouldn't have been given to those companies at all. It's even worse, $76 million connected to Liberal insiders. Is it incompetence? Is it corruption? Is it both? What the hell is going on over there?
We know that nearly 100 conflicts of interest were uncovered because of the Auditor General's investigation. It's shocking confirmation of corruption, and we know that they're going to try and cover it up.
This NDP Liberal government spent $200 million on McKinsey, which is just another example of this Prime Minister favoring his insider friends. The AG stated this was a flagrant disregard for procurement rules as the government sole sourced with no justification and competitive processes were changed to favor McKinsey. The clear favoritism is just one more example of this government choosing their friends over integrity. Dominic Barton is the former global head of McKinsey who was handpicked by the PM to be the Canadian ambassador to China and the chair of the Economic Advisory Council. So it's no surprise that after 2016, McKinsey contracting began to go up and up with few signs of stopping. He even joined a meeting between McKinsey and the Canada Infrastructure Bank while he was the ambassador, a meeting he hid from members of committee.
In her audit of McKinsey, the AG found this Liberal government broke the rules, showed clear favoritism, and could not demonstrate value for money.
Most of these $200 million in McKinsey contracts didn't follow the rules. In almost half, it wasn't clear that the contract was needed. And in some cases, the government even rigged the process to favor McKinsey.
This NDP Liberal government knew conflict of interest policies weren't being followed, and wait for it, did absolutely nothing.
The minister did nothing for 48 months, even though he had officials sitting in the meetings. And the Auditor General's explosive report on the NDP Liberal Green Slush Fund shows the personal friends of the Prime Minister funneled obscene amounts of money into their own pockets. The Auditor General confirmed that an incredible 186 times, almost half of all the Green Slush Fund projects, Liberal swindlers voted themselves hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer money to their companies.
The Auditor General's report on the contracts awarded to McKinsey by the government has just been released. 97 contracts worth over $200 million. More importantly, we learned that 71% of the contracts were awarded without a call for tender. 9 of the 10 departments and 8 of the 10 Crown corporations involved broke the rules. The AG even points out that this is a widespread problem. How can the Liberals increase the public service by 40% whilst at the same time relying on untendered contracts with private firms? Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General's report also shows that the use of McKinsey has skyrocketed since the Liberals came to power. But, I mean, we'd already noticed that. But for several of these contracts, the departments were unable to prove that all the consultants had the required security clearance. Yet McKinsey ended up with both hands in the pockets of public services, immigration, Trans Mountain, and even national defense.
McKinsey got over $200 million and billions more were given to other management firms. Our public service has the skills and is ready to do the work.
As you can see, all the opposition parties showed no mercy in grilling the government after this report was released. It almost felt like a Wednesday. So let's go and look at a clip from the Auditor General's press conference.
Good afternoon and welcome to today's press conference. We have with us today Auditor General Karen Hogan.
Thank you for joining me today to discuss the findings of 3 reports that my office released this morning. I will begin with our audit of professional services contracts. It looked at whether federal contracts awarded to McKinsey & Company between 2011 and 2023 complied with applicable policies and provided Canadians with value for money spent. These contracts spanned 20 federal organizations, including 10 Crown corporations. The total value of contracts awarded to McKinsey & Company during the period we reviewed totaled $209 million, of which about $200 million was spent. We found that organizations awarding the contracts showed a frequent disregard for federal contracting and procurement policies and guidance. We also found that each organization's own practices often did not demonstrate value for money. The extent of non-compliance and risks to value for money varied across organizations. For example, in 10 of the 28 contracts that were awarded through a competitive process, we found that bid evaluations did not include enough information to support the selection of McKinsey & Company as the winning bidder. While this audit focused on contracts awarded to McKinsey & Company, it highlights basic requirements and good practices that all federal organizations should follow when procuring professional services on behalf of the Government of Canada. Federal contracting and procurement policies exist to ensure fairness and transparency and value for Canadians, but they only work if they are followed. Turning now to our audit of Sustainable Development Technology Canada, which looked at whether the Foundation managed public funds in accordance with the terms and conditions of contribution agreements and its legislative mandate. We also looked at Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada's oversight and administration of public funds. Between March 2017 and December 2023, the Foundation approved $856 million of funding to 420 projects. The audit found that there were significant lapses in Sustainable Development Technology Canada's governance and stewardship of public funds. Specifically, the Foundation awarded $59 million to 10 projects that did not meet key requirements set out in the contribution agreements between the government and the Foundation. These projects were ineligible for funding because, for example, they did not support the development or demonstration of a new technology, or the projected environmental benefits were overstated. I am also very concerned by breakdowns in the Foundation's governance. The takeaway from these reports is that when good governance is lacking, the remedy isn't necessarily new processes or more people or money. It's about applying the rules that exist and having the right people with the right expertise for the job.
As you can see from that short clip of the Auditor General's press conference, she was quite critical of the government and how government contracts are awarded and how they were not being compliant with the rules. She made it very clear that there does not need to be new rules. They just have to follow the rules that they have. Now let's see what the Liberal government has to say.
Minister for Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for the question, Mr. Speaker. We're proposing now a new governance model which will be under the rules of the Federal Public Service, so we can have more rules around HR, more rules around funding, Mr. Speaker. We're going to restore confidence. We're going to make sure that we have a model of delivery that have the highest standard, Mr. Speaker. We're going to fight for the clean tech in this sector.
Yes. Clearly, the Liberals didn't listen to the Auditor General. She made it clear there did not need to be new rules or procedures. But in their response to all the criticism in Parliament, the Liberal government is planning on making new procedures and new rules, which is very typical of Liberals. Build a government, make it really big, and spend more money. Whatever they do, though, I don't think that they will ever address the underlying problem of corruption, of giving their friends and the companies that they prefer government contracts, even if that company is not qualified. In my opinion, that since all opposition parties are in agreement that there's massive corruption in the Liberal government on the awarding of government contracts, now would be a perfect time for a non-confidence motion. But that's just my opinion. I'd love to know what you think. Put it down in the comments below. Civil discourse is always welcome. And while you're down there, please remember to like this video, share with your friends and on social media. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. Also, there is a link in the description to a petition urging the Governor General, Mary Simon, to do her job, dissolve Parliament, and call an early election. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.